Borobudur is not a temple book. Section 7. Santo Saba works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on subjective academic studies and studies, this needs to be re-examined by experts in their fields. In an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. INDONÉSIARYÄ. By Santo Saba. Exploration and research. Complete info. Waatsap to +62813 2132 9787. Borobudur, with the form of a statue that resembles Buddha, is actually the position of the hermit samadhi ritual process of our ancestors to achieve perfection as humans during the previous civilization in Sunda land. Sangharama. Mahaviharya the Thera Arya. Vwana Kaka Fala. Now published as Borobudur. While the word or naming Borobudur is the naming of a Dutch philologist who did not understand who our ancestors were from the previous Indonesian nation. Sangharama. Mahaviharya the Thera Arya. Vwana Kaka Fala. The sentence above is the ancestral language of the Nusantara nation which underlies Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the language of our ancestors, not a language or from India. Sanskrit. Reorganized by Panini, the first Pakistanis wrote about the Sanskrit grammar entitled Astadhyayi, a Sanskrit grammar book containing 3,959 grammar laws of Sanskrit written in the 5th century BC. This means that Panini did not make Sanskrit, he only composed what was already there. Sangharama is a place. Study. Original Dharmak. In the past long before the 5th century BC. Maha Thupa. Maha or Mahe means great or great. Thupa is the beginning of the literacy of the word stupa. Chinese pilgrims to the archipelago called this word Top. Arya is the Kakya, Saka clan, the ancestor of the Indonesian archipelago to advance earlier. Mahaviharya is a place of practice and spiritual contemplation, procession made big and majestic. Maha and Viharya combined to become Mahaviharya. The word Vihara is derived from this word. Theras are people who learn or have become masters of the original Dharmic teachings, called Therans. Vwana Kaka Fala is a name. The building, literacy said Vwana. 3 stages of building form Vwana Chaka Fala as a description of the 3 realms of life that exist in this universe, not Kama, Rupa, Arupa Dhatu. The Indian version, actually, Tri Laksana, is also called Bhavanatraya. 1. Bhavana lasting, eternal realm. 2. Bhavana Drio, outward nature. 3. Bhavana Triya, Alam Rohaniya. Moksartham Jagadita Yasya Iti Dharma. Moksa. His contemplation with the practice of tapa, or topo, restraint to reach a spiritual level. Brata. Disciplined procedures are done to improve the quality of humanity. This is not a statue of Buddha, but he is the venerable Siddhartha Gautama following this technique of contemplation from our ancestors. The eternal realm is the Suwang realm, which does not have Purva and Wasana. This spiritual contemplation procession appears on statues of people sitting cross-legged. Tapabroto, the spiritual contemplation is Topo. 1. Toponing bodies. 2. Toponing lust. 3. Toponing buddhi. 4. Toponing suksmo. 5. Toponing kahyo. 6. Toponing jesing. Samadhi, Suwang, Laku, Yoga are the original spiritual contemplation of the archipelago. Java calls it Tapabroto. Tapa Brata, the term for the Parayangan area. Bali chants Upasana. Kamala in Sulawesi, when doing so is called Akamala. Tapo, Batagak in Svarnadvipa. There are 12 words. Svarga, not written the word Jana, or Nirvana. This proves that the language and the teachings that underlie it are native to us, the Indonesian archipelago. The literacy of the text of the word Svarga, the source of the Lontar, Geguritan Bima Svarga. In understand it as the holy realm, a temporary stopover for good souls. Swargo, Svarga, Svargaloka. Svarnadvipa, Indonesia, not India, is the starting place of the source of the principal philosophy, Dharma, Dhamma, which underlies the birth and growth of teachings there. India. Hindu, Buddha, Jaina, even Zoroastrians, brought by the Brahman, the Saka or Aryan nation. This is what is referred to as Brahmanism, the teaching before the Veda was written. And this is the figure of the previous Indonesian male figure, Paratheran, long before the birth of 2. Teachings, in India in the 5th century BC. Dharmadasa 700 to 620 BC. Dharmapala 670 to 580 BC. Sanjaya Balathapada 6 BC. Saraputra 568 to 484 BC. Svarnadvipa Dharmakirtis 610 BC 520 BC. Kumarila Bhatta I 618 to 540 BC. Adi Sankara 569 to 537 BC. Kri Janayasa Dapunta Hayam 671 to 702 AD. They are Putra Nusantara from Svarnadvipa, Sumatra, Indonesia, the initial source of Dharmic original, which is now perfectly preserved in Bali. Sangharama, Dharmic, learning center in Svarnadvipa named Dharma Phala. Sangharama, branch in India named Nalanda. The Sangharama that was raised up in Javadvipa was named Vwana Chaka Phala. Sangharama, Mahaviharya the Thera Arya, Vwana Kaka Phala, now published as Borobudur. Borobudur is the naming of Dutch philologists who do not understand who our ancestors really are. Borobudur, with the form of a statue that resembles Buddha, is actually the position of samadhi, the ascetic ritual process of our ancestors. That is the position of the stages of attainment at the highest level in meditation. Here we must be careful in interpreting Hinduism and the teachings that underlie the formation of Hinduism. The author emphasizes that the teachings that underlie the formation of Hinduism in India are the teachings that exist in the archipelago, namely those based on the teachings of the giver of the sun, as the basis of his philosophy. In many writings on the Shiva religion or the original teachings of the archipelago before converting to Buddhism, many call it Hindu Shiva. Whereas in fact the Hindu teachings in India and the Shiva teachings in the archipelago are very different, there are some similarities in terms of the name because Hinduism in India originates from the Shiva teachings in the archipelago. The pre-Hindu naming of deities resembles and is even thought to be derived from the name of the Indian Hindu teaching god. The author emphasizes that the name is a name that comes from the original source of the pre-Hindu teachings in Java. In the end, some of these teachings have survived and can be said to have almost disappeared unless we carefully understand more deeply their core philosophy. These teachings still remain in the teachings of Sundanese Wiwidan Badai, Tengur in the original Balinese, which the Balinese themselves call Baliaga. Lord Shiva is the naming of Bhattara Guru, and Maharaja Dewa, Mahadeva, which is closely identified with the sun in the original local form of the ancestral religious beliefs of the archipelago or during the New Ord era. This native religion was called Aliran Kebatinan or belief. Then this religion developed in India into Hinduism, which was in the pre-Vedic period. A belief that still existed in the pre-New Order era where the traditional indigenous beliefs of the archipelago could still exist, and during the New Order era this belief had to be called Hindu, even though Hinduism itself was different from the original teachings of the people of the archipelago. A belief about Trimurti as the original teachings of the archipelago which underlie the Hindu teachings of its existence can be known at a time called Praveda in India, and its naming follows the name of the original teachings, which consists of 1. Brahma, as the creator. 2. Vishnu or Vishnu, as the preserver. 3. Siva or Shiva, as the fuser unites, Hindu India, Shiva, destroyer. The author gives a little snippet about the original teachings of the archipelago which can be seen in the teachings of the ancestors of the Javanese tribe. Hawuning Javanese sacred cultivation system. The name of the original teaching or philosophy that still remains in the land of Java is called the Hawuning Holy Religion. Here the author quotes a little from the writings that are still in Javanese. Congo takes up the Panganane board. Wang wants to be desperate to add another place to walk the earth of Lodan Bay. Wang Saka Nusa Tempabesi Kui Kaperkayan, Agamane Nodhep Manemba Ning Diwasranjeng, God Jenny. The word Diwasranjeng or Diwa Agni. The sun is proof that they are not adherents of animism or dynamism. Also let's look at the Sundanese noble teachings. The teachings are pulsifa that appear in the form of statues and stupas at Borobudur are a depiction of the moral teachings of the original religion of the archipelago. We can interpret this in broad outline through the Sundanese Wiwidan philosophy, namely, religious moral teachings in the form of a dialogue between the main priest and Pwah Batara Shri, ruler of the realm of heaven, and Pwah Sanghyang Shri, guardian of the Matresgan nature. shown on the reliefs of Borobudur. It is emphasized that every creature in the universe, whether on earth or in the eternal world, should be able to carry out their respective duties. Namely according to the level of bayu, strength, word, voice, and hidap, iktikad, received from the Creator. Humans should also be able to balance their bayu, word, and hidap through various activities of spiritual and mental tapa, devotion, so that one day they can return to their divine nature. In addition, in carrying out tapa, humans should be accompanied by a full sense of sincerity. Do not be greedy, do not take other rights so as not to get lost back to Sakala earth and experience misery. If you want to do good, don't be half-hearted. That is the nature of the pastor and the nature of his asceticism, which is done day and night. Don't practice the wrong asceticism. That is the tapa of people who like to torture the body, are excessive in terms of power, deceived by their hearts, and lost because of lust. That is useless behavior. Being a pastor, do not just confess, but should be accompanied by true power. 1. Returning to the realm of the world in a form of a lower degree, becoming an animal, plant or other object in accordance with the belief in reincarnation, and 2. To the realm of no one, even to the realm of Jataniskala, one with the life of God and then Mahadeva. Those are some of the meanings that the writer can display in reading the form of statues in Borobudur, which are in accordance with the existing description on the Borobudur reliefs, and for more details the writer will explain the detailed discussion of the Borobudur reliefs. Below is the philosophy that remains in the people of West Java or Sundanese. See if there are similarities between the original beliefs of the Javanese and Sundanese tribes. This philosophy also appears in the Borobudur reliefs in several scenes and symbols. Wana Jataniskala is the realm of true Kemahagiban, as the highest place in the universe. The inhabitants are the supreme creator substance called Sanghyang Manan. Manan in Sundanese is the I, the supreme creator substance called Si Junajati Nistman. This substance is in the highest level of occultation and power. He is the creator of boundaries, but not bound by limits. Thus, each realm has its own inhabitants with different forms, characteristics, levels and duties, authorities. The essence of the archetypal archetype of the original teachings of the archipelago is, to do well and rightly based on a gentle sense of compassion. This basic pattern is applied through the Tri-Dharma, three kindness, namely as a guide to measure the value of one's greatness, human degree based on Dharma, goodness. This is the original Dharmic stored in the Sundanese culture. 1. Dharma Bhakta is someone who has practiced goodness towards himself, his family and in the small environment where he lives. His human being has the title, main human. 2. Holy Dharma is someone who has practiced goodness towards the nation and state. The human being has the title, man excellence plenary, becoming an idol. 3. Great Dharma is someone who has practiced goodness towards all life fairies, both visible and invisible, smelled, touched and untouched, all goodness that is not limited by space and time. The human being entitled, Adi Luhung Man, Batara Guru. This is the teaching of the ancestors of the Indonesian archipelago, the former Dharmic original. The values contained in this Tri-Dharma will later become the subject of the teaching of Buddhi Dharma, Buddha, which prioritizes goodness as evidence and devotion to compassion for all life to achieve happiness, or liberation from suffering. This teaching was later continued and developed by one of the leaders of the Supreme Master of the Rasi Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama, Sang Buddha, a crown prince of the Kapilavastu kingdom in Nepal, India. So, a statue in the shape of a person sitting cross-legged in Borobudur is not a statue of the Grand Master Rasi Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama. This is a Tapabroto visualization of the teachings of the ancient Indonesian archipelago. The formation of the Tri-Dharma of the archipelago's original teachings was carried out through different stages according to age levels, namely 4. Dharma Rasa is to educate oneself to be able to understand, taste, tenderness, in all things, so as to be able to present a state of feeling jung rumasa, realizing taste and understanding feelings. Thus in a person will appear respect, and concern for others and the ability to feel felt by others, other parties. This is the basic pattern of character formation. Compassion, and the human being later called God Sa. 5. Dharma Raga as educating oneself in real devotion, proof, or practicing the nature of feeling in everyday life, not theory, so that one day one's existence presence can be accepted happily, by all parties in a state. Naraga Jung Nawaruga, incarnate and present. This is the basic pattern of forming human behavior, which is based on the awareness of feelings and thoughts. A person who has reached this stage is called God Ta. 6. Dharma Raja is to educate oneself to present self as a human, compassion, which is complete in all life behavior, giving without giving, or giving without receiving, no strings attached. This level is the attainment of the most respectable degree of human being who deserves to be a role model for all parties and deserves to be called, made, a leader. All the practices or procedures to achieve as mentioned above are by practicing tapa, which is a ritual contemplation process, sitting silently, sitting cross-legged in a perfect position. The conclusion is that the temple, which is currently named Borobudur, is once again the original teaching of the archipelago. We can clearly see this from the statue of a figure who is doing meditation. Notice that every part of the back of the head is always depicted with the sun. The position of the statue is a ritual position to reach the level, the ones mentioned above. Also pay attention to the two old figures hovering above the hermit. Why this figure can float, in the discussion below about Borobudur we will find later. Who is this figure who can float? What connection with Saba can shorten the distance by flying, hovering? Also about the miracle that was given to Solomon could control the wind. The original teachings of the archipelago are based in the wise virtuous nature of the sun, which illuminates and distributes light to all creatures throughout the earth without favoritism and without discrimination. The sun has become the main source from which to start a joyful life, and without the sun everything is just darkness. That is why the ancestors of the original Nusantara nation were adherents of the teachings oriented to the sun, Sanghyang Tunggal, as a symbol of the oneness and oneness that exists in the sky, and the original teachings of the Nusantara religion could have been the teachings of the prophets who were not included in the 25 prophets and messengers. The teaching which is based in the nature of the wisdom of the sun is a high civilization in its era, namely the era before the islands of the archipelago were divided as it is today, where the islands of Java, Sumatra and Kalimantan were still called Pulau Besar, Meroe or Sunda land. Borobudur. This monument consists of 6 square terraces in which there are 3 circular courtyards. The walls are decorated with 2,672 relief panels and originally there are 504 statues. Borobudur has the most complete and largest collection of reliefs in the world. The largest main stupa is located in the center as well as crowns the building. This, surrounded by 3 circular rows of 72 perforated stupas in which there is a statue sitting cross-legged in a perfect lotus position with a Tenga attitude turning the wheel. Borobudur, the original form, is 3 levels in plain form called Pundan Barandik. The form of the 3 levels is a symbol of the meaning of the original teachings of the archipelago, namely, the highest power is in Sanghyang Kursa, the Almighty, or Noon or Sakyun, who willed. He is also called Batara Tunggal, God Almighty, Batara Jagat, Lord of Nature, and Batara Seda Niskala, the Invisible. He resides in Wana Nayangkung. All deities by name, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Indra, Yama, etc., submit to Batara Seda Niskala. There are 3 kinds of nature in the indigenous beliefs of the archipelago as stated in the Pantan regarding the mythology of the Kaniks. 1. Wana Nayangkung. The place where Sanghyang Kursa resides, which is located at the top of the temple. 2. Wana Panka Tenga. The dwelling place for humans and other creatures, located in the middle of the temple. 3. Wana Larang. Hell, it is located at the bottom of the temple. Between Wana Nayangkung and Wana Panka Tenga there are 18 natural layers arranged from top to bottom. The top layer is named Bumi Suki Alam Padang or named Alam Kayangan or Mandala Hyang. The second highest realm is the realm where Nyi Pahachi Sanghyang Asri and Sunan Ambu live. Sanghyang Kursa lowered 7 Batara at Sasaka Pusaka Wana. One of the 7 Batara is Batara Chikal. The meaning of lowering this Batara is not giving birth but creating or creating. Once again it is emphasized that the words above are not Indian Hindu terms. This is what underlies the writer that the Borobudur temple is the original teaching of the archipelago. This is a ritual place for worshipping the god Ra, The sun god is a symbol where at the top of the temple, which is arranged on the same shape in almost all large temples, namely Pundan Barandak, while the process of refining Borobudur temple, which consists of 3 stacks, is based on 3 stages Wana, namely 1. Wana Nyungkung. Sanghyang Kursa's place of residence, the part of which is located at the top of the temple. 2. Wana Panka Tenga. The dwelling place for humans and other creatures, the middle part of the temple. 3. Wana Larang. Hell, located at the bottom, the base of the temple. Once again, the author emphasizes that the temples in Java are the original teachings of the archipelago, not those from India, but the temples in Java are temples that were made by our own ancestors, the high and noble civilizations of the original archipelago. Below we will examine what Hinduism actually is. How can the author claim that Hindu India originates from the teachings that are in the archipelago? After we read this article, we can understand and prove that the original teachings of the archipelago were teachings that were born and grown in the archipelago, not from India. Let's follow the explanation. Before we discuss in detail about the Salindra house, was it true that the Salindra dynasty built Borobudur? For more details, let us know the history of the existence of the kingdoms in the archipelago. The royal year figure mentioned later is the number of years that still follows the current mainstream record. The number of years of writing history must be revised and clarified again. Because the calculation of the beginning of the Saka year on the inscription has already been calculated in 78 AD. This is what causes the loss of the historical record of the Indonesian nation before 78 AD. A. Salakanagara 132 AD 362 AD. B. Kutai, 4th century AD. C. Tarumanagara, 358 AD 669 AD. D. Kendan 536 AD 612 M. E. Gala 612 AD 1528 AD. F. Kalinga, 6 to 7 AD century. G. Sriwijaya, 7th-13th century AD. H. Salindra, 8th-9th century AD. I. Medang Kingdom, 752-1006 AD. J. Kahuripan Kingdom, 1006-1045 AD. K. Sunda Kingdom, 932-1579 AD. L. Kediri, 1045-1221 M. M. Dharmasraya, 12th-14th century AD. N. Singhasari, 1222-1292 AD. O. Majapahit, 1293-1500 AD. P. Malayapura, 14 to 15th century AD. The royal year figure mentioned earlier is the number of years that still follows the current mainstream record. The number of years of writing history must be revised and clarified again. Because the calculation of the beginning of the Saka year on the inscription has already been calculated in 78 AD. This is what causes the loss of the historical record of the Indonesian nation before 78 AD. Borobudur was not built by the Salindra dynasty and was not made by the architect Gunadharma. Here's the explanation. Wangsa Salindra or Salindra is the name of the Wangsa or dynasty of kings who ruled Sriwijaya. The origin of this dynasty is still being debated by historians who mention it from Sumatra, Java, Cambodia, Funan and India. Borobudur temple existed before Sriwijaya and Wangsa Salindra existed. This temple is proof of the existence of Shiva's teachings. Shiva religion, the native religion of the archipelago, is explained above about the teachings of the wisdom of the light, namely the wise teachings to be oriented to the sun with Shiva as the manifestation, and the previous society called it Shiva religion. And the peak period was in the civilization which was later named Saba. In some statements about the previous archipelago religions in the grouping of temples, at present it mentions the Hindu Shiva word, to distinguish the assumption between Buddhist and non-Buddhist temples. The term Hindu Shiva is found in all explanations about temples that are considered not Buddhist temples written in books or notes and explanations about temples currently circulating. After the author investigates Hinduism in India with the teachings that exist in the archipelago called Hinduism, there are many fundamental differences. The original teachings of the archipelago Shiva religion, which is forced to be Hindu, can be found in people who naturally isolate themselves. This philosophy can still be seen in the traditional beliefs of the Badai, Tengger, Kaharingan and Balinese tribes, which during the New Order era were called Aliran beliefs. Information circulating and written in almost all books and historical records about this temple. Borobudur was built in 770 AD and finished in 825 AD. It was built by Salindra's client with Gunadharma architect. This is not quite right. The name Gunadharma is not found in the dynasty and lineage of the Salindra dynasty from where and who is Gunadharma. Let's see the next explanation after we examine the year and the reign of the Salindra dynasty and its development claims in 770 AD. Kasparas also wrote about when to build it only based on estimates. What events and what kingdoms and understand what kingdoms in Java in that year. The name Gunadharma is only found in Javanese myths, stories about the hills of Mount Manore, hills whose shape resembles a human back. In exposing an explanation of historical facts, it can be proven based on the existing inscription, as long as the inscription does not undergo physical changes and distortions of the meaning of what is written in the inscription. To prove whether it was true that the Salindra Wangsa founded or built Borobudur, let's follow this exposure. The name Salindra is written in many inscriptions with a variety of affixes at the beginning and at the end of the word Salindra. 1. Salindravamsa was first encountered in the Kalasan inscription from 778 AD. 2. Salindragurubis, Salindrawansadalaxia, Salindrarajagurub is Caloric's phrase from 782 AD. 3. Salindrawansadalakana, in the Abhayagiriwihara inscription from 792 AD. 4. Dharmadingadewa Salindra, in the Sojomurto inscription from 700 AD. 5. Salindranama, in the Kyumbungan inscription from the year 824 AD. 6. Outside the archipelago, the name Salindra is found in the Ligar and Nalanda inscription 775 AD. All the inscription finds are true as well with the approximate year records written on the inscription. But all these inscriptions are years of information that is on the stone or any media about the year. The year records in the inscription can be interpreted several things. This can show the records of events, the history of the coronation. It could also be a record of the start of a new power or a king's declaration on the declaration. Nor does it mean that a historical object, in this case the Borobudur temple, was built during the number of years written on the inscription. We observe the origin of Salindra according to historians with several. The theory they propose about the origin of Salindra is as follows. A. Indian theory, about the origin of Salindra by historians Majumdar and Nilakanta Sastry as well as Mohans, argues that Salindra's descendants were from India who came from Kalinga, South India, namely in 683 AD. This family fled to Java because they were pressed by Dapunta Hyang's soldiers. B. Code's theory, argues that the descendants of Salindra are from Funan, Cambodia, namely in the 8th century AD. This family fled to Java because of riots in Funan, Cambodia. C. The Nusantara theory, which was strengthened by Poerbajaraka based on Karita Parayangan, and the interpretation of several inscriptions found among them the Kota Lime inscription which mentions the Sriwijaya Sumatran kingdom attacked the Tarumanagara kingdom. In Sojomurto inscription there is a title for Salindra as Dapunta Salindra, his father's name, his mother's name Bhadrawati and his wife Sampula's name in ancient Malay language. The name is not a Sanskrit name. This proves that the name is native to the archipelago. Based on Karita Parayangan, Sanjaya and his descendants are kings from the original Salindra family of the archipelago and adhered to the Shiva religion. The native religion of the archipelago is explained above about the wise teachings of the light giver, namely the wise teachings of the sun with Shiva as its manifestation. Here it clearly confirms Salindra who are not Buddhist. In the inscription of Raja Sankara, there is information that explains about Rakai Panaraban or Rakai Tamparan, who on the orders of his father Sanjaya to change religions from a religion or a sect which at that time was called the Saiwa school or Shiva religion, the original religion of the archipelago is a sect that is feared by everyone, become Buddhism. About Sanjaya written on the Kangal inscription. On the inscription is written information explaining that Sanjaya erected a linga on the hill of Stiranga for the safety of his people. Sanjaya's predecessor was Raja Sana who was married to Sanaha and gave birth to Sanjaya. We can notice that the names of Sanjaya's father and mother do not appear that the name is characterized by India. This name is a name that we hear very often in the archipelago, as well as the linga pulsifa symbol. The phallus is a symbol of a manhood in the form of an object or stone that stands upright, depicting manhood and the source of life. Usually there is also a partner who is a symbol of femininity, namely yoni. This is clearly shown in the reliefs of Suku Temple. In teachings other than the original teachings of the archipelago, there is no iconography about the linga as a symbol of masculinity and yoni as a symbol of fertility or feminism, the tenderness of a mother figure. Based on Karita Parayangan, the Salindra family originated from the island of Java, which was influenced by Sriwijaya Sumatra. The characters of Sana and Sanjaya were closely related to the Sunda kingdom and the Gala kingdom. They were originally Shiva, namely the wise teachings of the sun with Shiva as their manifestation. Religion during the kingdoms of Tarumanagara and Holing or Kalinga. In the explanation above, it is clear that the Salindra dynasty has an original religion which is called the Shiva religion. Western historians who make the distinction and separation between the Salindra dynasty and the Sanjaya dynasty, which states that the Sanjaya dynasty is Mahayana Buddhist and built several temples, this is not quite right. Wangsa Salindra and Wangsa Sanjaya are one descendant, all of whom are the same descendants. They are all Shiva religions and have never built new temples. The temples that existed during the Salindra period until the Sangrama Vijayotunga period were Shiva religion. And Borobudur temple existed before the Salindra dynasty. List of the kings of Srivijaya called Wangsa Salindra and the location of their kingdom. 1. Dapunta Hyang, Palembang 671 to 702 m. 2. Sri Indarwan, Palembang 702 to 728 m. 3. Rudra Wikraman, Palembang 728 to 775 m. The three above still mention that the location of this Palembang must be clarified again. Likewise with the historical record that wrote Palembang was the center of previous culture. 4. Sri Maharaja considered the transitional period of Salindra House, 775. 5. Dharanindra, Java 778 to 782 m. 6. Samaragrawira, Java 782, 792, add. 7. Samaratunga, Java 792, 840, add. 8. Balaputradua, Sawarnadwipa 860 m. 9. Sri Udayaditya Warmadewa, Sawarnadwipa 960 to 988 m. 10. Sri Kudamani Warmadewa, Sawarnadwipa 988, 1008, add. 11. Sri Mara Wijayotungawarman, Sawarnadwipa 1008, 1017, add. 12. Sangrama Vijayotungawarman, Kadaram Kita 1017, 1030 m. 13. Sri Diwa, Kadaram Kita 1028 AD. 14. Rajendra Chola I, 1012, 1044, add. 15. Kulathunga Chola I, 1071,120 AD. 16. Trailokyaraja, Mali 1183 m. So far, the presumption about the legacy of the Salindra dynasty is on the plains. Kedu, Central Java. It is necessary to know that the Kedu plain is a plain where there are many temples. It is not necessarily true that we can know the temple as a Buddhist temple after the explanation below, namely in the name of the king Wangsa Salindra who was in Java. Whether it was really kings, this builds Borobudur. 1. Dharanindra, Java 778 to 782 m. 2. Samaragrawira, Java 782, 792, add. 3. Samaratunga, Java 792, 840, add. 1. Dharanindra, Java 778 to 782 m. Dharanindra is the king of the Salindra dynasty in Java who ruled 778-782 AD. His name is found in the Caloric inscription with the title Sri Sangrama Dhananjaya, successfully expanding his territory to the Malay Peninsula and the Indochina mainland. Historian Slamet Mulyana called Dharanindra identical to Sri Maharaja Rakai Paninggalan, the third king of the Medang kingdom in the Central Java period, or the ancient Mataram kingdom. In the Ligar inscription, this inscription has two sides, contains the term Saruwamadamathana according to historian George Codes. This term was issued by Maharaja Wisanu. According to Slamet Mulyana, Dhararindra's theory is the king of Java. He had succeeded in conquering the Srivijaya kingdom including its vassal areas on the Malay Peninsula. The Ligar inscription is an inscription that praises himself as the incarnation of Wisnu. There is a difference in understanding between the historians' codes and slam it in terms of Maharaja Vishnu, namely that Maharaja Vishnu is the father and Maharaja Vishnu is himself Darorindra. What is a big note in the discussion above is the word Wisnu. In Buddhist teachings, the word Vishnu is not found, a word that is always rooted in Shiva, which is the original understanding and philosophy of the archipelago, the wise teachings of the light-giving wisdom, namely the wise teachings of the sun with Shiva as the manifestation. Here it is clear that King Dharanindra, the king of the Salindra dynasty in Javanese land that ruled 778-782, adhering to the original teachings of the archipelago, not Hindus or Buddhists who were born in India. So how a king will build a temple that is considered a Buddhist temple while he himself is a follower of Shiva's teachings, let alone know from his inscription about self-praise that is clearly visible? The conclusion that was obtained from King Dharanindra was, he was a follower of Shiva's teachings known as Vishnu, and Borobudur existed before Wangsa Salindra existed. This was a place of worship and even a monument to Shiva religion, namely the original religion of the archipelago, the teachings of the wisdom, the light of the teachings of the sun as the Qibla with Shiva as the manifestation. Original Dharmic. 2. Samaragrawira, Java 782-792, add. In the 782 AD caloric inscription, it is stated that Samaragrawira is identical with Rakai Warak, is the son of Darorindra, and in the inscription Nalanda Samaragrawira has a son Balaputredua. Based in the Kyumbungan Inscription 824 AD, Samaragrawira has a son Samaratunga and he has a daughter Pramawardhani. Of course, it has a philosophy that is not different from its predecessor, namely the understanding and philosophy of the original archipelago, the teachings of the wisdom of the light, namely the wise teachings of the sun with Shiva as its manifestation. Here it is clear that King Dharanindra, he had a daughter Pramawardhani, had the same belief as his predecessor in the Shiva religion, not Buddha, and did not build Borobudur. 3. Samaratunga, Java 792-840, add. Sri Maharaja Samaratunga was the king of the Medang kingdom from the Salindra dynasty, married to Dwi Tara, the daughter of Dharmasetu, the former Srivijaya ruler, and had sons Balaputredua and Pramodawardhani. Pramodawardhani is married to Rakai Paikatan, the son of Sri Maharaja Rakai Gurung or Mpu Pilar, the fifth king of the Medang kingdom. It is stated in the Kyumbungan inscription or Karang Tenga inscription, May 26, 824 AD. In the Kyumbungan inscription it is written in two languages, the first part of Sanskrit, the second part of the ancient Javanese language. In this second part, the old Javanese language is issued by Rakai Patapan Mpu Pilar, written Sima Swatantra, which is to award several villages to take care of the temple, also the Jinalaya inscription which shows how to care for the temple. The name Mpu Pilar is written in the Gandasuli inscription in 832 AD, namely Dang Karayan Patapan Sitabusu Peller, the last title of Mpu Pilar is Haji. To reveal about Borobudur temple and other temples we can understand from several inscriptions. As for the existing and written inscriptions about the year, it does not mean a temple was built in that year, even though the inscription is written with what is understood and presumed as the name of a temple. For writing and script and language on the inscription, we can know the time in which it was written as well, an announcement about something that is written on the inscription. With regard to temples and inscriptions we can observe from the writing and language. The understanding of many previous historians is that there is bias and blur in interpreting the words caring for and building on the writings contained in the inscription. Here the author tries to interpret it, namely. 1. The Kangal inscription is also called the Sanjaya Inscription or the Mount Wukir inscription, which is found in the courtyard of the Gunung Wukir temple in Katalui village, Salam district, Magalang, Central Java. The inscription in the form of Kandra Sengkala is written with the numbers 654 Saka or 732 AD, written on the stela stone using the Palawa script and Sanskrit. This inscription is seen as the self-statement of King Sanjaya in 732 AD, as the universal ruler of the ancient Mataram kingdom. This inscription tells about the linga or the symbol of Shiva in the village of Kunjarakunja. Written also about the early king, Sana, later replaced by Sanjaya son of Sanaha's brother. Sana women. Inscription free translation as follows. Verse 1. King Sanjaya's construction of the phallus on the mountain. Bait 2-6. Worship of Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. Bait 7. The island of Java, which is very prosperous, is rich in gold mines and produces a lot of rice. The Shiva Temple was built for the happiness of the people with the help of the residents of Kunjarakunjadesa. Bait 8-9. The island of Java, which was ordered by King Sana, who was very wise, fair in his actions, was an officer in battle, was generous to his people. When the state died in mourning, it was sad to lose its protector. Bait 10-11. The successor of King Sana is his son named Sanjaya, which is likened to the sun. The power was not directly handed over to him by King Sana but through his older sister, Sanaha. Bait 12. Prosperity, security and peace of the state. People can sleep in the middle of the road, do not have to be afraid of thieves, and thieves or other crimes will occur, people live happily. In the Kangal inscription we can get some key word points, namely in 732 AD Sanjaya was in power, worship was done to Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. This explains that Sanjaya is not Buddhist. It is also necessary to remember that the deities mentioned above are gods who are not the Hindu version of India but the original version of the archipelago's beliefs. This can be emphasized by Sanjaya's reverence for Sana, like the sun. Verses 10-11. In the Indian and Buddhist versions of Hinduism, there is no iconography or symbol of the sun as high in worship. In the 7th stanza it is written that on the island the Shiva Temple was built. Here the word was founded means the meaning of having been established or not going to be established either, that is, a word of respect for the previous ancestors, which also explains that our ancestors from the past had built this magnificent temple. This is prestige language, a prestigious language that seeks to elevate the announcer's self by mentioning one of his former greats. That from a long time ago, our descendants were already great. That's what we want to convey to the meaning of the written word. On that island, the Shiva Temple was founded. Whereas in Bait 1, King Sanjaya's construction of the phallus on the mountain. Here Sanjaya explains that he marked the existing temple by making a sign of a phallus stone. Linga is an upright stone which means a symbol of masculinity or masculinity for a man. So the conclusion that we get through the Kangal inscription is Sanjaya's announcement that he is the universal ruler of the Mataram kingdom by proclaiming and marking it through the erection of a sign in the form of a linga stone on a temple. Which also means as a sign that its prosperity and greatness have existed in the great civilizations of our previous ancestors in Java. And I am the successor of a great ancestor since ancient times with evidence of this large temple. My descendants will take care of our ancestral heritage. I mark this commitment to care by sticking a phallus stone in front of the temple. That's what Sanjaya means. 2. Kyumbungan Inscription or Karang Tenga Inscription, May 26, 824 AD. Kyumbungan Inscription is an inscription on 5 pieces of stone found in Karang Tenga hamlet, Temanggung Regency, Central Java. This inscription is written in Old Javanese script using 2 languages. The first line to 24 in Sanskrit, written Samaratunga with his son Pramodawardhani, as king and son. We can interpret the 2 meanings in the inscription, namely in Sanskrit writing, foreign language for Javanese people, explaining about the king and his daughter, in Sanskrit, namely the language of announcement to foreigners or the language of the world. Also as a language that was considered prestigious at the time today it can be called English. The line, which is in Old Javanese language, states that on the 10th Krenapaksa month of Jyestha in 746 Saka or 824 AD, Rakai Padapan Pupalar inaugurated the rice fields in Kyumbungan village to become Sima land or Perdikan land tax-free areas. Written also the sentence Jinalaya, Wenuwana and implied the meaning of a place to place the ashes, King Indra. On the line also written the sentence Jinalaya, Wenuwana Y. In this section it is written in Javanese or local language, because this is intended for local people who will take care. So, the understanding of Jinalaya tends to the procedure of caring for not building, because if it is interpreted to build what is its use, it will be announced to the general public if it is a new plan. Especially in Sanskrit, the word Wenuwana or bamboo forest is to explain the position or place of an existing temple. King Indra is the name in the language of respect for kings who will die and their ashes will be placed in the temple. The word Indra has the meaning of light, namely the personification of humans who carry out service, and symbolizes the representative of the light giver, namely the sun. The essence of the contents of the Kyumbungan inscription are: declaration of care for Kamulan Bhumishambara by Mpu Pilar or Samaratunga to promote Awardani by establishing Sima Swatantra, which is to award several villages to care for Kamulan Bhumishambara. Mpu Pilar or Samaratunga also defines Jinalaya. Jinalaya is the name for a procession or procedure for caring for a temple. The current language is SOP for temple maintenance, standards of temple maintenance procedures. 3. Try Tepusan Inscription, an inscription from the era of the ancient Mataram kingdom in 842 AD calling the figure of Sri Kahulunan, who has designated several villages as areas to care for the holy place of Kamulan I Bhumishambara. Borobudur's original name is Wanasaka Pala. 4. The Shivagra inscription, the inscription with the numbers 778 Saka or 856 AD, was issued by Daya Lokapala after the end of Rakai Paikatan's reign. This inscription mentions a description of the Aging temple group which was dedicated to Lord Shiva. Shivagra inscription. This inscription tells us that what the Aging temple group means is the temples around Prambanan temple, so it is clear that the temple is designated for Lord Shiva, is the original temple of the archipelago. 5. Nalanda Inscription. This inscription is found in Nalanda, Bihar, India with the number 860 inscription. The interpretation of this inscription is: Sri Maharaja in Sawarnadwipa, Balaputredu, a son of Samargrawira, grandson of Salindra Vamsadalaka, Mustika of Salindra family, with the nickname Sriviravarammathana, assassin of enemy heroes. The king of Java who married Tara, the son of Dharmasetu. The Nalanda inscription is evidence that the Salindra dynasty ruled all the way to India. We already know that the Shiva religion is a religion embraced by the dynasty or the Salindra dynasty. This is the basis for the author to conclude that Hinduism in India originates from noble teachings. The ancestors of the archipelago, namely the original religion of the archipelago, the teachings of the wisdom, the light of the teachings of the sun, as the Qibla with Shiva as the manifestation. Do worship of Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. On the inscription that mentions the same name Kamulan I Bhumishambara on the Kyumbungan inscription or Karang Tenga inscription, May 26, 824 AD. And the Try Tepusan inscription in 842 AD. On the inscription that is inscribed with different numbers of years, of course, it certainly explains that it was not the year of manufacture. We can conclude that the two king figures declared a declaration of care. We can draw conclusions from some of the inscriptions described above, namely, that the written year statement does not explain the number of years of the founding of the temple, but the number of years in which the declaration of a king to a magnificent building, namely the temple to care for it, if interpreted inscribed on the inscription were establishment figures. This matter was impossible. We have concluded that Borobudur was not built by the Salindra dynasty and was not made by the architect Gunadharma. Borobudur book is not a temple. Section 7 continues to 8. Santo Saba works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on subjective academic studies and studies, this needs to be re-examined by experts in their fields. In an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesian Arya. By Santo Saba. Exploration and research. Complete info. Waatsap to +6 2813 2132 9787.